Dr. Pillai, you're a countrywide renowned expert on management. You've done something very wonderful in preserving Chanakya's legacy by translating him to the modern times. You are also, as I understand, the director of the Chanakya Institute of Public Leadership, and this is at Mumbai University. Absolutely. And you host a wide palette of clientele from the MNCs, and your wish, as I understand, is that management as an art needs to be practiced to perfection so as to reach the desired result. When I think of Chanakya, I think Chanakya is like the ultimate pragmatist. Okay? Like even when he talks about power, he's not trying to decorate it at first as if अच्छा ये good power होनी चाहिए. He's like power है, देख लो, साम दाम दंड भेद, ठीक है? ये चारों forms हैं, उसके बाद तुम decide करते रहो, right? Like he's very pragmatic in that way. And I think it is his pragmatic side that also took him to talk about politics and economics. बड़े pragmatic subjects होते हैं. But it's interesting कि उसके जो roots थे, they were very scientific, like metallurgy, right? And coinage, like stuff like that was also at his roots. He was studying natural sciences. And then there is also the abstract, which is philosophy.
Yes.
What is happening? Like, how's one man and how are these things connecting for him?
Very, very, very beautiful question, sir. Because, Chanakya can be defined as a polymath.
Right.
The polymath is a person who is an excellent specialist in multidisciplines. So he knows various subjects. So he talks about the other world and he talks about this world also. So, many people ask me, who is Chanakya? So many people say he's an economist. Somebody says he's a guru of leadership. He's a guru of political science. But not many people know that he was actually an alchemist also. He was a specialist in what we call as Rasayana Shastra or chemistry. He knew how to make the coin. So think about it, that there are these rare masterminds who can be multidisciplinary at the same time. Remember one thing, having so many talents without the base of spirituality can be dangerous. Reason being that, you have so many skills, you can destroy the world. Right. And Prakhar, as you beautifully pointed out, finally it's all about power. Power, if not being used for the right purpose, for the service of the society, can become one of the biggest problems for the society.
Right. It will decompose the society instead.
Absolutely. So powerful people can either become corrupt or powerful people can become great leaders.
Right. There's that 7 Sins by Mahatma Gandhi where he says science without humanity and business without ethics. And I think it's one of the most beautifully done paradoxes of the modern times. It's like, yes, if you get too much power, you have to remember what the cost is.
Yes.
Right? Right. And I think that's what a kingmaker does it not? कि मैं king बना भी रहा हूँ. Like imagine that amount of power. I was always fascinated. एक तो king है, चल ठीक है. You're born into it. Then there is the kingmaker. Like he masterminds the king.
And Chanakya's case, he creates multiple kings. Not many people know that it is not one teacher, one student. So kingmaker is not about Chandragupta Maurya. He created many kings. And of course, the class first was Chandragupta Maurya. But it's like going into an IIM where everybody comes out as a CEO.
Right. And one of them goes on to start maybe like an Amazon, but like, I see. So he made many kings. He was teaching.
Absolutely. He was an Acharya. And remember, a teacher will be very sad if he's only got one student.
Right.
So yes, he's a kingmaker of multiple kings.
Who else was on his roster of kings?
So I'm not a historical person to understand this, but let me tell you, some of them who actually became kings were of smaller kingdoms. So it's like, chief minister bhi bana diya or prime minister bhi bana diya. And, you require both.
Right.
So, you require somebody to manage states, somebody to administer the states or the kingdom. So there are so many people. In fact, it is said about one of his friends called Amatya Rakshas. So Amatya Rakshas was a prime minister under Dhananand. But he said, you don't have to go away. You have to continue leading the kingdom along with Chandragupta Maurya. So in one way, he's a kingmaker for even Amatya Rakshas. So there are so many other students of his who go on to, become military leaders. Some of them become, treasury heads. Right. So, if somebody has studied and become a CFO, Chief Finance Officer, or a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, all these are also kings or mini kings in their own way. So just to tell you, Chanakya created kings in his own generation. But what is very important is that the books that he wrote inspired many kings after he died in future generations. So kingmaker or a teacher's influence doesn't stop with one generation or one student. It continues forever. And look at it, 2021, we are all discussing about Chanakya's strategies even today.
Right. Is there more people like Chanakya?
I say yes.
Yeah. More polymaths?
Many. In fact, if you do a little bit of a Google search, the education system wants to come back to create polymaths. So there was a generation which created specialists. In that you're a doctor, then you're a doctor. Then in doctor also you have to become an ENT specialist or a heart specialist or a brain specialist. They say, that's not a very good system coming out. So nothing wrong in being specialist, but you also should know what's happening in the general world. So I think one of the major challenges education system is facing, and we are trying to correct it, is basically let's create people who are good at something, but also can do multiple things.
You think that's happening?
It is happening, and it will happen because if you look at the national education policy in India or what's happening abroad also, they are saying that let's get into liberal arts. So what's liberal arts? You can have a course where you can take one subject of economics, one of Bharatanatyam, one can be of astrology, and one can be of chemistry. Who stops you?
Right.
So
I know. I'm pursuing a liberal arts education, so I know exactly what you're saying. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. It truly is like the essence of education.
Absolutely. And the student enjoys it, which is much more important rather than getting a certificate at the end of the course.
Right. There is something very I was listening to you talk, and there was something about documentation, and you said towards the end of it, write your book. Right? Like write your book. Who's going to read is not your problem. And I love that. And I've had this book idea written down on my notes for some brief period that I ever get to type it out, called Unwashed. And what I want to talk about with Unwashed is how to unwash yourself of the programming that is left, the residue that you carry out of school. Right? Like the burdens that, I feel like the fundamental idea of examinations is so perverse as it happens in real life. The fact that there is a right answer somewhere, remember it, paste it, and you will get rewards. And those rewards you can't even, in real life, it's very, very different. It's a lot of trial and error, taking the cost, and then asymmetry of success. One success, 99 failures. That kind of stuff. And so the idea of that book being that I want to talk about how education system just sort of does not, where it fails to prepare us for real life. And I don't know, maybe I'm just very victimized in that sense. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just angry at how the education system took care of me. But I just fail to see, with a background like Chanakya in our culture, why do we have an education system that is so compartmentalized? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a right question to ask. And I asked this question to myself. We had a legacy of a Guru Sishya Parampara. We had a legacy of great teachers, great students. And how come our country has become like this? So I would like to say, two people to be blamed. One is the Britishers and second is the Indians.
Right.
So Britishers created a system, and I will not blame them totally, because that was a generation, maybe when they were ruling.
Right.
And as Macaulay report says, we need to change the education system.
Yeah.
So they changed it.
Yes.
But the question is that after 75 years of Indian independence, when the Britishers are gone, you can't keep blaming them.
Yes. Right.
So let us say that जैसे ताली एक हाथ से नहीं बजती, तो Britishers चले गए, लेकिन हमने क्या किया? And let me tell you, instead of cursing the darkness, better light a candle.
Wow.
And you'll be surprised. I have done my little bit part of bringing back Chanakya into the education system, and believe me, it's working phenomenal.
Okay, imagine if there is Dr. R.K. Pillai part 2 listening to this podcast, right? And he wants to pick up one historical figure that Dr. Pillai could not do himself because Chanakya is just overwhelming. There's so much. Where would you send them? Like, go to that figure, learn everything about him, and bring him back into the education.
So I would send him back to 4th century BC, where he would study at Takshashila under all the great acharyas.
All the great acharyas. Lovely. That is great. Takshashila was quite something else, right? Like the university concept being born.
Absolutely. And let me also tell you that the concept of a university during those days is not the concept of a university today.
How?
Yeah. So let me tell you, when you look at any university, how do you visualize it? So it's like, so many classrooms and, some buildings and libraries. No. That's not the concept of university. In the olden days, university was a collection of scholars. Okay, so what would happen is that generally there could be an infrastructure, no doubt about it. There could be some books. They were, palm leaves during those days. But that is not what you call a university. A university is a collection of super brains from different disciplines. So there used to be something called as Shastrartha. Very interesting thing. What is it? So let's say there is one particular acharya or teacher who is a specialist in chemistry. Okay, so he'll be teaching chemistry in one subject, as we do in today's education system. And let's say somebody is a acharya of astrology, and somebody like Chanakya would be a acharya of political science. You know what they did? They came back together and they should debate and discuss. And the students used to attend that class. Unfortunately, today we have that one teacher and some students sitting over there. Today we have this concept called conferences where teachers come and do some presentation of papers. But imagine multidisciplinary teachers used to discuss ideas and say what is the subject required to be taught to the society, not just by students. So simplifying it, during those days it was heavy debates and discussions rather than taking a class to the students, and they were very rich and they were documented. So if you study Indian scriptures, believe me, everything is documented where the debates and discussions brought out a rich scientific research. One of the examples is Kautilya's Arthashastra.
So like this is this understanding that sort of Socrates also has, that like wisdom should be conversational, that it has to be dialectical rather than discursive, where it's going from, and I've always found that to be the case, because absolutely idea समझना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है, but किसी और के idea के relative कोई और idea समझना is easier. Right? Isn't that not the case?
Absolutely. It is synergetic in thought process. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. So if you have an idea, I have an idea, together we have a better idea.
Right. But please, sorry.
Yeah, and imagine, a group of 10, 15 experts debate and discussing. And please understand, it is very democratic in nature. It is not you versus me. It is you and me.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, you gave me a very interesting thing to think about. Abhi tak main sochta tha education system needs to be changed for students as an outcome, but also for teachers. If you put them in conversation, if you take out whatever, because I've seen Western academia closely and I sort of know what the flaws might be. There is a lot of insulation that sort of happens. It's a lot of echo chambers that sort of form around people. And this is a very good technique to sort of break that boundary and then continue pursuing higher thought, truth, whatever might be. That's super interesting. And how else was Takshashila different in that way? Like अभी क्या है, हम लोग जाते हैं क्लास में, एग्जाम लिखते हैं, वेट करते हैं कि क्या रिजल्ट है, और फिर वो हमें किसी जॉब की डायरेक्शन में प्रोपेल करेगा. हमारा एजुकेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट एक फनल है. तब कैसे था?
So not only Takshashila, there are many universities like Nalanda, Vikramashila, so many. Okay.
Right.
So how were they different? First of all, you had to go to a particular Gurukul for a long period of time. So it's like definitely what we call boarding school.
Right.
So it cannot be like a daily college going and coming back. Most of the colleges in India, you can go and come back. And in a Gurukul, there used to be an ecosystem, for 12 to 14 years, depending on the kind of curriculum they had. And interestingly, the acharya, what we call a teacher, has to be a charati, the one who practices what he preaches. So he has to be a subject matter expert. Okay, the first thing, you cannot just teach theoretically. So, you got some degree and you're teaching that. No, you have to be doing it yourself. And the students used to be watching the teacher's behavior. His achara. He cannot be a person who is, teaching something on the lecture platform and practicing something else. So the character mattered a lot. Right. The teachers were role models. The second thing, they used to teach them two things. And it is called Paravidya and Aparavidya. Paravidya means worldly knowledge. So that's where we have subject matter experts who will teach you a subject that will help you to actually get a living. So, if I learn something, a trade or a commerce, I need to make a living. But that is Paravidya, worldly knowledge. But along with that, they also teach Aparavidya, that is spirituality. And therefore, the students were really prepared what to do post-retirement also. Our education system teaches you how to make a career. They don't teach you what to do after the career ends.
That's a very interesting point, sir.
So we are preparing engineers, doctors, or whichever discipline to get an earning. But there comes a point in time where earning doesn't matter. Happiness matters, spirituality matters. Right. And today we have seen, the young generation and many of them retiring by 40, 45 because the financial needs are done. But they are not going to be dying very soon. So imagine somebody who has done his financials at 45 and is going to die at 90.
Yeah, that's half his life.
45 years of total, directionless life.
Right.
So our education system in the olden days used to plan you for not a career, but actually make a successful life, not career planning, but life planning.
I wonder, I'm sure there is a way to examine, say, what Chanakya was saying and this, that. And part of the examination is ki kya badhiya Magad kingdom went on beautifully for so long and so long. Were there any documented failures that his strategy had? Like, do we know what he learned from?
Yeah, so I would not say failures, but I would say with every generation, many things become irrelevant. So अगर मैं आपको version 1 का mobile दे दूं and today you're using version 10, you say, it's a failure. It's not a failure, it's evolved. So what is happening? We need to always update and upgrade our knowledge and skills. So I would say if you go back to Arthashastra or Chanakya, he wrote that particular book depending on what is the requirement of his generation. But after a few generations, a lot of ideas may become irrelevant. I'll give you a simple example. During those days, it was very clearly typically one monarch. Okay, but today we can have multiple monarchs or multiple kings. Very important thing is that during those days, according to Arthashastra, there were 18 government departments. Okay, or ministry is what we call it. But today, 18 is a very small number. Looking at the size of a country like India, you may have new ministries. So IT ministry was not there. We have a water ministry. So think about it. So what I would say is that, the failure is not the question, but, is it relevant is the question. So, there are a lot of social experiments that Chanakya and his other acharyas did. And that's very, very important to know. They were doing social experiments. What is the meaning of social experiments? That you take the society as a laboratory, you put certain ideas and experiment. Like I'll give you one of the greatest social experiments that he did was woman empowerment. Okay, and he guaranteed that every single woman of the society will be earning member, including the Rani and the Rajamata. No other culture in the world. So yes, that's very, very important. And today we are talking about woman empowerment. You'd be surprised. Arthashastra talks about every single lady of that particular kingdom actually having an earning source of income. Can you believe that?
How did he plan that?
Yeah, that's a very important question over here. So one is basically your skill and what you call your nature, which is called swadharma. I can't teach you something and say, no, you'll have to make a learning, but you don't like it. So your nature may be actually something different from what the skill you have. For example, by nature, I would like to be a photographer, but according to skill, I'm a medical doctor. Then, I'll be actually practicing that medical profession, not because I love it, because I'm qualified and somebody pays me a few thousands of rupees.
Right.
But actually, whenever I get a free time, I will take that big camera and go for bird watching.
Right. Yes.
So what is very important to know that Chanakya actually made sure that everybody is getting an income or an earning based on what we call as swadharma. What is swadharma? So, we have to understand that every single person who is born on this particular planet is unique. So, you are unique, I am unique, everybody is unique. So, why do you want everybody to be put into one box? Can't we have multiple people with multiple revenues? That's a good thing. So, what he did, since I was talking about women empowerment, he said there will be some people at the lower strata of the society. Okay, they may not be very rich, they may not be too intelligent, but doesn't matter. Okay. They can work in a factory or they can work from home. By the way, work from home was a concept in Arthashastra. Okay. So one of the industries that Chanakya worked on was actually textile industry. And for thousands of years, we have been the cotton producing capital of the world. Cotton producing capital of the world. So what he did, what we call today as a Lijjat Papad model.
Right.
So suppose you can't go out of the house, but there's an actual factory set up by Chanakya. Okay, you can actually work from home, maybe do something and you'll get daily wage paid for it. So the lowest strata of the society will also earn. And think about the highest woman in the society. There are two of them Chanakya speaks about. One is the Rajamata, the king's mother, and the Maharani, the wife. He actually solved the Saas Bahu problem also. Now, can you believe it? That even though you are a king, you are actually getting paid equal to the woman.
Right.
So the Rajamata and the Rajapatni will also get the same amount of salary which the king will get. Think about it. Isn't that woman empowerment? That the number one and the last woman of the society is also earning. Because remember one thing, women want love, care, okay, be it a mother, a sister, a daughter. They want love, care, safety. But please understand, they also require money. If you really respect the females in your family, make sure you empower them economically. I've seen a lot of, highly educated women, they are frustrated, not because they don't have money. Okay, so I've seen rich women, I don't want to sit at home. And I want that extra money because that gives me confidence.
Right.
So this is one of the biggest social experiments that Chanakya did. And that's why we were the Sone ki Chidiya, or the richest part of the world. So think about it, that every single person has been financially empowered, which actually makes it one of the most powerful and wealthiest nations of the world.
Sir, the way I think about it is, if India, our society, whatever we have, right, if that has to go forward in any way, if that has to solve any problems in the world, if that has to move ahead in any form or shape, it has to get 100% of the processing power online. What will we do if 50% of the processing power is at home? We need all these smart people on the game. We need to go forward together, right? And so, it's a question of just natural demographics for me. Why don't we move forward by taking everybody along? Why are we leaving some people behind? We can do so much better, right? And time and again, all of us experience this, at least now. Girls do so much better at school than boys. They have so many mannerisms that, generally you'll find girl topper class mein, right? Because they're organized, they're committed to that. We are leaving all of that behind because of stigma, because of this, because of that. Not worth it, in my view. Not worth it. Right? But, you said, you spoke about irrelevance and how that sort of sinks in to ideas particularly. And I've always wondered, every time I've gone into history to look at a character and figure out, they say history repeats, so you need to get the form and structure of how things happened in the past. मतलब substance change हो जाता है, but shape और architecture थोड़ा historically repetitive रहता है. And I've always wondered, कितना कुछ है जो irrelevant हो जाता है, और अगर irrelevant हो जाता है तो उसको safely update करने का process क्या है? आप समझ रहे हो? You take Chanakya and there is all this stuff he's saying. Some of it is going to be very against, say, common morality these days, right? और कॉमन मोरालिटी के अगेंस्ट भी नहीं है, तो हो सकता है कि वो अब इतना प्रैक्टिकल, प्रैग्मेटिक, एप्लीकेबल ना हो हमारे मॉडर्न कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. तब उस केस में उसे कैसे अपडेट किया जाए और कैसे डिस्कार्ड किया जाए जो यूजफुल नहीं है?
इनफैक्ट मेरे जो स्पिरिचुअल गुरु है स्वामी चिन्मयानंद जी, he founded the Chinmaya mission worldwide. So he used to say every generation has got two responsibilities. One is to carry forward the knowledge of the past, okay, and the second responsibility is to discard which is not relevant. So in India has got such a history of great literature. When you read many of them, you say, wow, like Arthashastra in my case, that carry forward some of the wisdom, the knowledge, the principles. But remember one thing, don't get stuck in the past. There are a lot of things which are not relevant today. Right. Okay. So we need to say, for example, in every society across the world, there are some bad social practices also.
Right.
You cannot glorify, Bharat mein aisa tha, अरे सब कुछ सही भी नहीं था ना.
Right.
So what is good, carry forward. What is irrelevant, discard it. And every generation has to do. So what is very important to know is that what we call as an annual audit. In companies we have, this stock taking. So, after 1 year, you decide, these are the good and the bad things. Let's do corrective measures and take it forward. So I think there has to be a generation audit from time to time. So every generation has to sit down and say, listen, Papa, Mummy, Dada, Dadi, we love you, we respect you. But you know what? Our generation is different. So let's have a discussion.
Right.
Let's do an audit of where the society is going. And then your generation, especially the young generation, has to take a call where they want to take the generation forward. Because the old people can give wisdom, but old people are irrelevant after a point of time. So take the wisdom from the old people, okay? But youth has to sit down and decide, great. But my generation has to decide what our future is for the next 50, 60 years. So what is very important is that it is a very dynamic process. It cannot be said, only this works. Like, for example, the current generation's challenges are so different from the generation challenges of my parents. For them, it was roti, kapda, makan. I think those particular concepts are over. And the world has already become flat. Your generation has got the advantage of technology, real-time, information. You can do research with just one mobile phone. So the thing is that, are you building on this advantage or are you just going to go back? So I think what is important to do, a generation audit from time to time, and decide the course of action to the future that the youth wants. Youth has to decide the future of their generation. The old people cannot. They can give guidance, they can give wisdom, but the future youth only can decide. So I think let's do a generation audit. But India is a very strange country. Its future depends on the past. India's future depends on the past. In fact, I go to the extent of telling the world's future depends on India's wisdom of the past. And look at yoga being one of the examples. Look at Ayurveda, they're saying that there's so much wisdom. And I would very proudly say, even though originated in India, the wisdom of India is universal. So my question is that, are all of you, and you are such a big influencer, sit down and debate and say, कि हमको कौन सी दुनिया में जीना है? हमको कौन सी दुनिया में आगे जाके मरना है? You always have to leave a world better than that you found it. Right. And again, quoting Swami Chinmayananda, he said, what you have is God's gift to you, and what you do with what you have is your gift to God.
Very
so
interesting.
Change the world positively based on the experience of the past.
Right. Because, at some point, Dr. Pillai, I'd like to go about doing a lot of research, being an expert in one domain to the point where I can hold its pieces in my hand and then hand it over to whoever else can take anything from it and, take it forward. It's almost like you said, lighting a candle, and then उस candle की मशाल बना के लोगों को बोलो कि जाओ रोशनी फैलाओ, right? मैं बड़ा personal हो जाता हूँ ideas को लेके. I'm very fond of, for some reason, I've just always been like that. And मेरे लिए ना, it's a monumental task researching somebody to the point where you're an expert about it. Right? एक मैंने बुक पढ़ी थी बहुत पहले, I think अश्विन सांगी की बुक थी, about this guy who falls in love with Chanakya until he finds something that, और वो मतलब थोड़ी mytho-fiction और उस सेंस में थी बुक, but it's like there is a guy वो लाइब्रेरी में बैठ के चाणक्य के बारे में सारी किताबें पढ़ रहा है. आपका भी was your past like this? Were you reading a lot of books about Chanakya? How was your journey like, in terms of understanding Chanakya and its core, its essence?
So the beautiful part, Prakhar sir, is that my journey is not yet over.
No, of course not. By no means of imagination, sir. You are right in the middle. You are peaking right now.
Absolutely. अभी तो मेरा take off point शुरू हुआ है.
हाँ. But how did it start? How long ago did it start?
So I've been in the journey for the last 21 years. Okay, so it's been quite fortunate for me that I have great parents, great teachers who encourage me to read a lot. Okay, so I've been a very active reader. I have a collection of more than 7,000 books. Okay, and reading has been one of the biggest passion and hobby that my parents gave to me. My parents never told me, not to buy a book because there is no money and all those things. And fortunately, with time, I kept collecting Chanakya books from a lot of places, reading so many versions of Chanakya Niti, Arthashastra. So when you keep doing something over a long period of time, it becomes a part of your personality.
Right.
And believe me, as Swami Vivekananda put it very nicely, take one idea and give your whole life to it. That is the route to success. And to be very frank, मुझे चाणक्य छोड़ के कुछ समझ में नहीं आता. लेकिन चाणक्य समझ में आता है तो सब कुछ समझ में आता है.
Right.
So, I've been reading a lot. I do a lot of research. And the good news is that, Professor, that it's so happening that a lot of people are now writing on Chanakya. Okay, so of course, I've written 17 books and all those things. And it's a good thing, because when a revolution happens, it can't be with one person. So I can see a lot of, colleges, schools, universities saying, let's have a Chanakya course, let's have an Arthashastra course. And they're also writing books. They're also speaking on it. So I think we are at a very interesting point where, I used to feel very sad, that Chanakya and Arthashastra is not even known to our generation,
right,
except for some scholarly community. My role has been that, if it is in the libraries, it should be a discussion even on the sports field and also in the boardrooms. So, my contribution was to simplify Chanakya the way a child can also understand. Imagine writing a book called Chatur Chanakya, a character where we are saying that, Anvikshiki is important for even a child. So coming back, my journey has been reading a lot, but not just reading, but also applying in my own life. Okay, so, I have experimented it on myself. I experimented with hundreds of companies. I've experimented in so many educational courses. In fact, we work with the Indian Armed Forces also. So we've been surprised that this Chanakya wisdom is being accepted and practically applied, even in spiritual organizations, in NGOs, in political parties. So, so I've been very fortunate that किताबों से लेके reality तक पूरा journey हो गया है. Now the thing is that all that we have got from this experimentation, we are carrying it forward in the form of actually making others also read, write, and experiment at their level.
So what it is like जैसे अगर आप ये military में या MNC में, whenever you're there, what you're doing is you're offering principles from Chanakya and asking people to experiment along those principles.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please. I was going to ask.
So one of the biggest problems now this generation of Indians are facing is called succession planning. Okay. So, let's look at 1947. All the economic models were crushed by Britishers. We became job seekers. Okay. Actually, we were a country of entrepreneurs. The biggest industries were destroyed. The shipping industry, we were the kings of the world. Okay, that got destroyed. Surat was almost like the financial capital, that was destroyed. So I think the entrepreneurial, the quality in our blood was actually lost. So from 1947, what happened is that, slowly some communities started building up businesses. And today is a generation of total entrepreneurs. In fact, you are an entrepreneur, I am an entrepreneur. Today, people don't want jobs. They want to think and work on ideas.
Right.
Actually, that's an Indian DNA. Indians want to work on ideas, not for money. Okay, and if you work on what you're good at, you'll definitely get money. Now, coming back to the point that you asked, what happened is that, I saw this, maybe 25, 30 years ago, this whole business acumen started in many Indians. So we have the Infosys and we have the Wipros and so many companies. Now, what is happening today? We are seeing that the companies which are 25 years and above, okay, those companies have a major problem. Who is going to run the company after me? Okay, so what is happening is, if you look at Tata's, of course, they have perfected it in 150 years and all those things. But what about this new age company that started 25, 30 years ago? And many companies are either getting acquired by somebody else, what we call mergers and acquisition, sold off, or they don't know mera beta ya koi capable person hai kya nahi hai. Now, this is a common problem in thousands of companies in India. And what do? We come there and say, listen, now you already done it, 0 to 25 years ka journey ho chuka hai. But 25 to 50 years ka journey, then what do? We actually help them with succession planning based on Chanakya's principles. For example, a Yuvaraj has to become a Raja. Okay? But remember one thing, just because you are born under a king's family doesn't guarantee that you can be a great Raja. So that's a training of a Yuvraj. So what we do with hundreds of companies, we actually work with the promoter and the children of the promoters. And you'd be surprised to know, we tell them, shayad aapka beta ya beti laiki ka bhi nahi hai. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, because many times there is a misconception in India, just because you're born in a family, you are capable. No, birth doesn't guarantee. You need to have the qualities of leadership to continue it forward. And many times this particular, it's a very emotional kind of a situation where you say, mera beta sambhalega, beta capable hai to sambhalna hi chahiye, but training bhi dena chahiye. और अगर वो capable नहीं है तो company को बेचो मत. Maybe one of those employees who's got that skill has to be upgraded. Look at the Tata group of companies, So it's not necessary that every particular promoter or the highest shareholder becomes a chairman. So we've seen this, good leadership qualities. So coming back, we also help companies to even selection of managers. In the Arthashastra, there's a chapter called Amatya Utpatti or Mantri Utpatti. So king should have good ministers. So how do you test? How do you actually do the whole exercise of the right selection? Because minister is not a small person. He's working with the number one person. So we actually help, we do experiments. We'll be very fortunate. We are also taking a lot of Indian companies global. That is very important. There is a concept called as Vijigishu. Indians always were world leaders. And there is a process to it, by the way. It is not theoretical, okay? And the concept and the process is called becoming a Vijigishu, world conqueror. Vijigishu. So exactly, even I never heard about this 20 years ago.
Right.
Indians always believed in being number one in every field. But nobody knows it. It's all there. So what we do is that, let's say you're going to play cricket, you better win the World Cup. If you want to play tennis, better go and win Olympics gold medal. And if you're thinking anything mediocre, it's not worth it. So we are taking young companies to actually get listed in New York Stock Exchange.
Using Chanakya's principles.
Absolutely, 100% Chanakya's principles.
Like
so we don't say, don't.
That's so fascinating. Like what are, एक principle बताओ मेरे को ताकि मेरी imagination थोड़ी खुले उस direction में.
तो मैं आपको बताता हूँ, हम लोग startups की बात कर रहे थे, we're working with a very interesting startup. And we tell them very clearly, don't become an Indian global company. So पहले Indian हो जाओ, बाद में global हो जाओ. Think about a global Indian company. So why can't you actually think world number one? So Chanakya believed that if you want to be a leader, don't be an ordinary leader. Become a Vijigishu. So the concept is ulta. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 के बारे में सोचो, the remaining steps will be taken care. So as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in the mind. Yeah. And one principle, this is what you ask for, that we always give all of our clients and whatever we call with the business group, we say, don't think big. Huh? Don't think big, think biggest. बड़ा मत सोचो, सबसे बड़ा सोचो. So not even number 2. तो बड़ा सोचने में तो कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, लेकिन सबसे बड़ा सोचना.
ये कि मतलब मैं aim for the stars and reach the moon वाला आइडिया है कि
no. Why compromise? ये भी गलत है.
मतलब जाना है तो जाना है.
No, second option ही नहीं है. You only will go to win the gold, not even silver. Somebody put it very nicely. You never win a silver medal. You actually lose a gold medal. Nothing but number 1 in that field. Number 2, then you not understood Chanakya.
Right. Have you written an Arthashastra translation also?
In fact, that's what all of my students tell me, कि आप भी कीजिए. So that's something that I have to start my work on.
Right. But if somebody had to read, say, Chanakya's Arthashastra, आप कौन सा edition, कौन सा author, like आपकी क्या preference है?
बहुत सारे हैं. In fact, there are a lot of people also across the globe writing translation. So the first one which was translated from Sanskrit to English was Shama Shastri in 1905, Mysore University. Then there has been Ganapati Shastri in Malayalam. A lot of things, even modern day. Patrick Oliver is there. But my favorite, is R.P. Kangle.
R.P. Kangle.
1960, it was published by the University of Mumbai. And it's very simple to understand, but very profound also. So I would say read anything as long as it's very well researched, scholarly. There is one L. Rangarajan also. But my personal preference, which I use as a textbook in the university, is R.P. Kangle. And easily available. If you can just Google and search it. So the Sanskrit translated into English, and R.P. Kangle also translated that into Marathi because he was from Mumbai, Maharashtra.
Right.
So if you want to get the best book, my suggestion and my recommendation is R.P. Kangle.
R.P. Kangle. And we'll find it on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I will link that because I'm sure a lot of people are going to get very interested in Chanakya. That's very interesting. What is the latest book you've been working on?
So in the pandemic, I have actually written 4 new books.
Wait, in this one pandemic or like the last pandemic? It's one pandemic, huh?
One pandemic.
Right. Very interesting. What are those books?
So one is Chanakya and the Art of Winning. So that's another one. So I've written a lot of books. So that is something going to come up. Then, of course, the 100 most important sutras of Arthashastra. So,
100 most important sutras.
You say, 100 best ideas of Chanakya.
Right.
And of course, Chatur Chanakya Part 2.
Right.
So that's my thing. And of course, I'm working on an audiobook also.
With Audible, or are you just recording
with Audible? With Audible.
With one of your books, you are recording as an audiobook.
Yes, and they're original content. Okay, it's not a physical book into audio. It's original audio.
Oh, acha, original audio ही है वो.
Yes. So like that may come out in a book form, but first it's going to be in audio form.
Right. आपने कभी सोचा नहीं podcast में कर दूँ वो? Like you just take a podcast and record the whole thing.
बिल्कुल वो हो ही रहा है. So a lot of people are actually doing it on their own, or it's available. In fact, listening is the way forward now.
It's so much easier. Just generally so much easier, right? Absolutely. आप सुनते हो podcast वगैरह?
बिल्कुल. That's the way forward.
Right.
In fact, you'll be surprised, Prakhar, that we are actually going back to the olden days.
How?
It is said basically the way of knowledge in the olden days was Shravana, listening. So even if you did not know to read and write, that was fine. But if you are born deaf, then you are unlucky. Because only through listening you actually get knowledge. Reading is also a source, viewing is also a source, but the human brain actually understands by listening. So there are a lot of people who were illiterates, but they were having wisdom because they could listen properly. So actually listening is number 1 skill for learning. And we're coming back. So podcast is one of the ways of actually making people listen. Right. And you'll be seeing that, viewing or listening ka agar aap compare karoge, so listeners are more than viewers. Right.
I understand. No, that's true. In fact, even with podcasting ना, मतलब जो एक feeling है चलते हुए, गाड़ी चलाते हुए, कुछ किसी चीज में physically involved होते हुए सुनने की ना, it's almost like a trance state. मतलब मेरे को तो I personally loved podcast so much that I ended up starting one. I was like कि this is such a natural thing. कितनी अच्छे से समझ में आता है. Ideas get laid out properly. You can have like a back and forth, so on and so on. And I'm very interested in Chanakya at this point. Like I'm interested, ये pragmatic philosophy, हमारे यहाँ philosophers weren't very classified in that way, है ना, अक्रॉस द रेंज बात कर रहे थे. सो इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू पिन पॉइंट एंड बी लाइक अच्छा इसका ये थॉट था क्योंकि उसके इतने सारे थॉट थे, राइट. बट आई ऑलवेज सी चाणक्य एज लाइक अ वेरी pragmatic guy, somebody who figured out politics while he figured out natural sciences, and that gets me very interested. I have no more questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Of course.
Yes,
Tell
please.
me, what is the youth, especially your followers, thinking? Your followers.
See, I'll tell you, one of the biggest questions that people who I address have is how do we choose our careers? Because you are right, हम ना वो post रोटी कपड़ा मकान एज में रह रहे हैं. आप समझ रहे हो? अब क्या है कि एक वो रोटी कपड़े मकान का प्रेशर थोड़ा सा ऑफ हो गया, बट डर अभी बाकी है. और फ्यूचर में क्या है उसके लिए कोई खास तैयारी नहीं है. दैट ब्रीड्स अ कंफ्यूजन 12th ग्रेड के बाद, कॉलेज के बाद, कि मेरे को अब समझ नहीं आ रहा कि मैं अपना करियर चूज कैसे करूं. एंड आई सॉ आपका जवाब इस सिलसिले में ये था कि अपने आप से पूछो व्हाट यू आर गुड एट. और भी 3-4 तरीके के मॉडल ऐसे एग्जिस्ट करते हैं. बट अगर आप कोई इस पे कोई बात, इफ यू हैड अ सॉल्यूशन सजेशन फॉर दैट, आई वुड बी वेरी हैप्पी टू सी व्हाट यू हैव टू से. बट दैट इज वन ऑफ दोज थिंग्स इनवेरिएबली दैट पीपल गो थ्रू. द अदर, एंड ये मेरा इंटरेस्ट था विद राइटिंग दैट बुक अबाउट स्कूल एजुकेशन, इज अ लैक ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस. और वो ना मतलब हमारी अपब्रिंगिंग में एक जो हैपहैजर्ड स्कूल सिस्टम है, और मैं स्कूल सिस्टम की बात सिर्फ टीचर टू स्टूडेंट नहीं, स्टूडेंट टू स्टूडेंट इंटरेक्शन भी ऐसा हो जाता है इन द लैक ऑफ लाइक अवेयरनेस, इतने स्टूडेंट्स, इतनी टीचर्स, कि एक प्रॉपर जनरेशन डरी हुई है. मेरे लिए फियर इज अ वेरी बिग मोटिव. आदमी अपने आप को इतनी चीजों से खुद को इंटरेक्ट करने से रोकता है बिकॉज देयर इज सटल फियर. एंड यू नो, लाइक यू वर सेइंग इन वन ऑफ योर टॉक्स, सटल जितने सटल हो गए उतने ज्यादा डीपर हो गए इन योर. एंड दीज सटल फियर्स पीपल डोंट इवन नो हाउ टू नोटिस. My end into spirituality is always you need to get spiritual, or you need to have sort of a time with yourself, this emptiness with yourself, ताकि तुम देख सको कि भाई किस चीज से तुम्हें डर लगता है. And then you can liberate yourself from your own self. Then you're free. Then you're not bound. तो as far as the youth is concerned, I think ये दो मेरे लिए immediate problems हैं. People figuring out what they want and fear.
In fact, I am so happy that आपने ये point को address किया. So I can give 1 or 2 insights.
Please.
Is it okay?
Yes. अरे, is it okay? That is what we're here for. हाँ.
See, because you yourself are such an accomplished person.
अरे सर, आप क्या बोल रहे हो? Like, I am now at this point I'm embarrassed. But thank you. I appreciate
so let me at least give you one of the insights. You know, the career that we are talking about, and I also come across so many students. You know, there are multiple choices. And unfortunately, the parents can't guide them.
Yes.
Because they lived in a very straight line where, you know, ये पढ़ाई करना है, ये job करना है, फिर शादी, and then your life is done. So it's a very linear model. And as you rightly pointed out, you know, this generation, apart from the roti kapda makan not being a problem, has got a problem of too many opportunities. So I'll tell you what the solution. How do you choose your career? What you're good at? So I'll tell you one simple thing. Every person can actually have multiple careers. So why do you want to have one career? Like, for example, I'm an author and I'm India's #1 business author. So that's one career for me. And I can write 4 books. Why not?
Right.
That doesn't stop me of only being a full-time author. So I can run a business. I can run a business academy. I can actually run a university program. And actually, I can spend a lot of time with my family as well. The first solution is that don't look at only one career. Look at probably multiple careers depending on what you're good at. Second, very, very important, have a lot of mentors from multiple disciplines. So what is happening is that, you know, whenever you have a problem, whom do you speak to? So somebody who will guide you in your career has to be somebody who's more mature than you. So when I have an academic problem, you know, university mein kaise karna, I have my mentors, Dr. Shubda Joshi Madam, Dr. Gangadharan Nair. So they're all academicians. But it doesn't stop me there. Suppose authors, I have these friends of mine, you know, this great people like Ruskin Bond and people like that, you know. So they are like people who help me. Sudha Murthy is one of my, you know, direct mentors. So you have these mentors in this field. The third one is, let's say, how to run business. Okay. I can have multiple mentors there also.
Right.
So I go to people and say, कि मैं ज़्यादा नहीं कमाता, आप बताइए ना कैसे ज़्यादा कमाना है.
Right.
So number one thing, don't think about one career. That's the way your parent generation are trained. About having multiple careers with multiple mentors in each of the field.
Right.
Remember one thing, the simple formula from age of 20 to 25, please experiment with multiple careers.
बिल्कुल. I बिल्कुल certify this advice, sir. हाँ.
नहीं तो क्या हो जाएगा, अभी आपने ये पढ़ाई किया तो आपको यही करना पड़ेगा. Not necessary. Keep experimenting. But 25 के बाद थोड़ा serious हो जाइएगा. You know, and if you want to still experiment, maximum 30. Okay. it is not only a social pressure, it's also biological. When we start aging, our body also slows down a little bit. So I think 20 to 25, just go around, yaar. Har ball pe chakka maro, and different fields mein jaake khelo. So don't worry about it. Just tell your parents, please take it cool, okay? I'll do something in my life. I have seen people started earning money by just experimenting, maybe a show or something like that.
Right.
But after 25 years, somewhere it's very important to start focusing on that one field, which will be a core field.
Right.
Okay, for example, at the age of 27, I was fortunate to actually narrow it down to Chanakya.
Right.
Okay, then give your life to it.
Right.
Then don't go back. So what I'm saying, it's an 80-20 concept. So focus on one thing, just go for it. The other thing also, you can keep experimenting. Who says that you have to have only one career?
Right.
So the answer about career choices is that you can have beautiful multiple career choices. But remember one thing, have mentors in all the fields.
Sir, I was very impressed by Eklavya story जब मैं छोटा था. And I realized कि यार मतलब मेरे को बचपन में 4 or 5 my father told me that story. And I remember it क्योंकि मैं अभी अपने एक दोस्त को बता रहा था. आप अगर एकलव्य माइंडसेट में चले जाओ ना, आप कुछ भी सीख सकते हो. आपको बस गुरु द्रोण की मूर्ति बनानी है. और इंटरनेट में मूर्ति भी नहीं, चलते फिरते गुरु द्रोण मिल जाएंगे जिस डायरेक्शन में चाहिए. ठीक है, फिर बन जाओ, तुम अर्जुन से भी बढ़िया बन जाओगे. राइट. इफ यू वांट टू लर्न ना, तो सिर्फ इच्छा मांगती है. और ये चीज एकलव्य की स्टोरी से 100% क्लियर है. All you need is the desire to learn, and you will find a way. And my focus is always on the learning part, because eventually 99% of the time is spent in the process. वो 1% time outcome, और वो outcome भी आगे चला जाता है. If you enjoy the process, you are guaranteed at least happiness. Success तो आएगी ही आएगी, फिर वो एक second order consequence है, but you are at least guaranteed satisfaction. I have one more question that I'm just reminded of right now. What do you have to say about ये जो 12th के boards cancel हुए हैं? If you were to give a piece of advice to 12th graders जिनके अभी board cancel हुए, उन्हें पता नहीं, their life has been, सर मतलब मैं समझ सकता हूँ, हम लोग पीछे मुड़ के देखते हैं boards, चलो ठीक है, this that, but उस moment में ना आपको लगता है कि मेरे life की जो train है वो derail हो गई है, right? Like अब मेरे को पता नहीं next क्या है, उसके next क्या है, उसके next क्या है.
So I think students are very happy, exam नहीं देना.
Very happy, they're very happy, true.
And parents are unhappy, इतना खर्चा किया, ट्यूशन क्लास भेजा.
Right. सरकार ने बोला कोरोना वायरस खत्म.
But I'll tell you something. There is a fear of examination which has been removed.
Right.
So हमें यहाँ पे आपने बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट बताया कि fear जो है ना कहीं बचपन से डाला गया है. I don't know, it's examination fear, it's fear of relationship, fear of a job not doing very well, fear of a career. क्यों हम ऐसा करते हैं? So coming back, fear निकालने के लिए, the best thing to do is that don't worry about your future, just take it by stride. So अभी देखो सरकार ने 12th का announcement किया है. So I tell, my academician friends also. I'm a teacher, by the way, so I take examinations.
Right.
One of the things I always say is there's a difference between assessment and examination. So what are the difference? Okay. Suppose you studied something. आपको कितना समझा ये तो असेस करना टीचर की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. बट हमारे यहाँ पे क्या होता है, एग्जामिनेशन पैटर्न इज अबाउट दैट 1 day 3 hours where your memory is actually tested. So that fear कि I may not be able to reproduce the skill that is required in the 3 hours actually is the problem. So in fact there's a joke which says before the exams I was wise, I remembered everything. After the exams I am wise, but during the exams I'm otherwise. तो जो फियर है वो एग्जाम का नहीं है. वो फियर ये होता है कि वो टाइम पे अगर मेरे को अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं मिले, एंड अनफॉर्चुनेटली इट्स ऑल अबाउट कंपैरिजन एंड कंपटीशन. सो मुन्ना को कितना मार्क मिला और तन्नू को कितना मार्क मिला और तुम कप्पू को कुछ नहीं मिला. दिस इज हॉरिबल. इट्स अ सोशल स्टिग्मा अबाउट एग्जामिनेशन. बट लेट मी टेल यू अबाउट द एग्जामिनेशन गेटिंग कैंसल्ड. Let me tell you, finally what's going to happen, even if you get good marks, the life is not about being academically brilliant. It's whether you're upgraded and then you're performing at every stage of your life. I was a very average student. Let me tell you this, okay? So agar main pass ho jata tha, like wow, or I used to get some good marks, so it was a celebration. But today when I look back in my school or in my college, those people who excelled, they are just average. So academically brilliant hona zaruri hai, but wo sab kuch nahi hai. So my thing is 12th exam nahi ho raha, but there are bigger exams of life. How do you deal with your boss? How do you deal with your wife? How do you deal with your in-laws?
Right.
How do you deal with your career? How do you deal with your success? By the way, there's a big problem. How to deal with your success? People are talking about how to deal with failures. Think about it. You're such a famous guy. Tomorrow something happens wrong. You have to manage your success. Absolutely. It's a perception management. So I think 12th standard के exams हो रहे नहीं हो रहे, take it, by the study. You never know. They may just tell you we're going to re-examine it.
Right.
You have to be ready for that also.
Right.
And the point is that, after this what?
Right.
So the question is that, let's prepare for the 12th standard beyond 12th standard.
कि लंबी रस्सी पकड़ो, ये तो छोटी रस्सी है, एग्जाम आएंगे जाएंगे पता नहीं कब होंगे, लंबी रस्सी है कि तुम सीख क्या रहे हो, किस डायरेक्शन में मूव कर रहे हो, like focus on that. Is that what you're saying? Am I understanding you properly?
Absolutely, because life is an exam, not just 12th standard as an exam.
Right. Focus on life as an exam. Focus on life as an exam.
Exactly.
Right.
और आपके अलग अलग टीचर होंगे हर सब्जेक्ट के लिए. बिजनेस कर रहे हो तो आपको एक बिजनेस टीचर मिल जाएगा.
Right.
आप शादी कर रहे हो तो तभी भी आपको जरूरत पड़ेगी कि you will have somebody who will teach you how to have a successful marriage. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
Especially in our Indian culture, it's not two people getting married. It's two families coming together.
Right. It is very different from what marriages look like otherwise. दो लोग हैं अपना अलग रह रहे हैं. Yeah, sab, hello, hi. Right. So it's an affair. Right. It's a festival. And that festival is a union of people. I was speaking to आचार्य प्रशांत करके एक spiritual teacher है recently, and he made this point very clear to me. He's like, हम लोग बात करते हैं career तक, young youth से. We never talk about what happens once you start getting into relationships that you cannot just back out of easily. वो एक अलग ही level की management है, और उस पर ध्यान देना, वो समझना, family start करना is a huge responsibility. And तब से I decided, I was like, I'm going to slowly start talking about that part of life as well. Where how do you manage a relationship जिसमें रोज की खींचातानी हो सकती है. You live together. It's not easy living together, But thank you so much, Dr. Pillai. This has been absolutely fantastic. आपसे बात करके बहुत मजा आया. अब मैं आपको दोबारा परेशान करूंगा, एक दिन दोबारा कॉन्वर्सेशन करेंगे.
नहीं, मैं आपको एक वर्ड ऑफ एप्रिसिएशन दूं.
हाँ जी, बताओ.
You impress me a lot with the books in your background.
बस ये तो मेरी बुक्स की एप्रिसिएशन है. मेरे को लगा आप मेरे को करने वाले हो. नहीं, थैंक यू सो मच.
याद रखिएगा.
हाँ.
Your background is not just a show off.
Right.
I can see this. It's not like decorative books.
Right.
I'm sure the way it has been arranged. You read it. You are a lover of books. Because your persona somewhere reflects about the kind of a thinker that you are,
right?
The kind of a knowledge seeker that you are, So you can see the Chanakya in the background.
Right. So
that's my personality. So I can clearly look at this and say that you have a thirst for knowledge,
right?
You have a thirst for wisdom, and you've been one of the most wonderful persons that I have met. I'm looking forward to see you in person also very soon.
That would be absolutely amazing, sir. You are absolutely one of the most charming speakers I have seen on the Indian YouTube space. I'm looking forward to the next few books that you put out. Thank you so much for sparing time.
Happy to help wherever I can. The generation requires big thinking, biggest thinking, and together we'll do it again and again and again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I think what I love the most about मेरा जो पूरा content career is having these conversations. I'm absolutely floored by how much fun it gets. And the reason is because after years of trying, I've understood the rhythm to conversation. I've understood what it takes for two people to dance with words. And if you want to learn just that, go check out The Art of Conversation.